All right, we're here with the great Harvie S. That's Harvie, Harvie S.
Thank you.
7 letters, you can get that easy nowadays, right? So we met a few years back, and he just told me about this new recording he has found, and so we decided to meet. How you doing, Harvie?
Thank you. Great, Marshall. Great to see you as always.
It's great to see you too. So tell me, let's jump right in, man. You know, amazing playing. The great Alan Dawson on drums.
Oh, yes.
You're playing the bass. You've played with, I believe, everybody, as Mike Stern has said. Mike Stern. I'm not sure what age he was. Tell me about it. What year is that?
That was 1980. Was it 85 or 82? I can't remember.
I
think it
think
was
80. I
85.
think 85.
85. Yeah, 85. So I'm not exactly sure how old Mike was, but
This was before Miles, though, and everything, right?
no, he was with Miles at the time, I
Hmm.
believe.
I see.
And yeah, he was really in absolutely top form and extremely I don't know, inspired on this particular. See, what happened was I had been playing at this club with different people. It was called the 1369. It was a small club in Cambridge where a lot of just tons of great players played there, and the owner was talking with me, and he said, "Look, why don't you bring in a band? Since I've been seeing you here with so many people." And I said, sure, sure. And at the time, I was playing with Mike Stern a lot, 4 or 5 nights a week. And I said, why don't I come in with Mike Stern? And my original thought was to get one of the New York guys. We were working with Victor Lewis, Joey Barron, Adam Nussbaum. I mean, those guys are unbeatable. But I was thinking, why don't I make this gig a little different and get Alan Dawson? He's here and one of the greatest drummers in the world. Why go to New York when I'm here in Boston? I'm going to ask Alan.
Right.
So I knew with Alan, we had played gigs together and stuff. And he said he would be glad to do it. So we did this gig there, and it was 3 nights, and it was jam packed, and word got out, and by the third night, you couldn't. People were fighting to get in. It was like, it was really a big event, and it was great. It was just an amazing gig, and like Alan Dawson was like. I mean, it was like he was reading everything that Mike was doing. He just knew what to do, and they had never really played together. So it was just this phenomenal stuff. So then, we played these 3 nights, and like to me, it was always like one of the most amazing 3 nights of my life. But I figured it's over. It was done. The music is gone. It's in the air, as Eric Dolphy said on a record, which is really weird because it wasn't gone. But that's another story. But anyway, so I've been over the past 4 years or so. I've been going up a lot to play with Jerry Bergonzi for him,
You've known him a long time, huh?
We knew each other as teenagers.
Oh, get out! I didn't know that.
Oh yeah, we ended up going to New York. He spent a year in New York. We were roommates.
Wow.
Then he decided, I don't know. He said, I don't really want to be in New York, and he moved back to Boston, and he stayed there ever since. And made a great career. And but that was the situation. So I was up there playing a lot. I still, in fact, I'm going up about a month from now. I'll be going up there again. I have 2 gigs with him up in that area. And David Lee, who is a guy that everyone in Boston loves, great guy. And he records people, and he's one of the people that everybody trusts. So I said, yeah, David. I said, yeah, it's too bad it wasn't recorded. Meanwhile, and he looks at me and he says, oh, I got all 3 nights. I said, you what? Meanwhile, he never tells me this.
Right.
Never tells me this. So he says, so I said, okay. We had to do things, but he got a great sound. I mean, because he
Right.
had really high quality microphones,
Wow.
and it was recorded onto a cassette. It sounds great.
It sounds
And
great. What was? I'm going to jump into Alan Dawson for a minute. I'm sure some of the listeners don't know his name, but he was huge when I was coming up. So tell us a moment about Alan.
Alan Dawson is, from the Boston area. I mean, he was a child prodigy. When he was 14, he was like the top drummer in Boston. Uh, and this is a long time ago. This is in the 50s. And he played with everybody. And then, he played with Sonny Rollins, and he, made a lot of records on Prestige. And I mean, quite truthfully, he was on a fast track to be one of the top, like the next Roy, like on a Roy Haynes level or something like that. I mean, that kind of drummer. But he decided he was a family man. He wanted to be with his family. He didn't want to. He traveled only when it was. He worked with Dave Brubeck for a couple of years and went in first class style. If he couldn't travel really well, he didn't want to do it, and he rather stay home and teach. And he played vibes. He also played really good vibes. And of course, he was the first call drummer in Boston, and he did take some tours. But he didn't get really famous because he wasn't really on the scene. But and he was Tony. He's famous for teaching Tony Williams,
Hmm.
and virtually anybody who went through Berkeley or went through Boston. If you're a drummer, you studied with Alan Dawson, or you're a fool. Like that you couldn't give a reason why you wouldn't study with Alan Dawson. And also, Alan Dawson had to be one of the nicest guys. He's like in the top level of super gentleman. I put together the tracks. It was a lot of work. Mike really was really happy with what I did because I made him okay everything. But I left the last tune called Bruise, which is a Mike Stern tune called Blues. It's over 14 minutes, and that's untouched.
Hmm.
So I wanted to leave one track
Right.
on the record where you really feel what went on in the club.
Well, look, for me, look, man, I've been like big band guy. My buddy calls me because I've played with so many big bands, man. I was curious. Have you done any big bands? Did you ever work with big bands? What's your history with
Oh
the big band?
yeah. When I first came to the city, I was playing with Gil Evans. I worked with his band for a while, and then I was the bass player with Thad Jones Mel Lewis band. I took over after George Mraz,
Hmm.
but at the time I couldn't really do it because they were mostly just doing Monday nights, and it's like when Richard Davis did it. He was pretty much doing studio work and then playing in that band. But I
Right.
was traveling, and I had a lot of offers then. Uh, so I really couldn't stay with them, and it was really a thrill to play with that band.
Wow.
I did a lot of work with them, and so I played with those big bands. Then I used to be in the Westchester Jazz Orchestra for like
Uh-huh.
10 years,
Hmm.
and that was a steady big band. We did 4 concerts a year, and we did a whole bunch of
Right.
things
Right.
that we did, and so I played with that band. So yeah, I played with a bunch of big bands over the years,
It's a,
and
it's a,
I
how
love
how would
playing in a big band.
how would you say your approach changes on the bass as you're approaching the bass, playing with the big band, as you did say with the trio or the quartets or your Berganzi, Michael Brecker, anyone else who's fronting the band? What changes?
Oh, absolutely, a completely different concept of playing. Oh, the other thing too is I played with Louis Bellson,
Oh,
and
okay.
I'm on that record live in New York,
Hmm.
and I worked in his small group for like 4 or 5 years, and I did big band gigs with him also. But when you play in a big band, you really have to look at it. I mean, every band is different, of course, but essentially, you really have to pare everything down and really understand the different sections and how to play with them. it's not, and the bass is more, I mean, it's really a supportive instrument in the big bands, and you get some solo space here and there. I also play with Peter Hand. I'm on his last three big band records
Hmm.
too, so I did those big bands too. So I've done a fair amount of big band playing, and it's essentially the idea is to play in tune, in time. You know, be careful of the dynamics. You got to really play the. You can't get too loose with the parts,
Right.
or you got to know when to do it. Uh,
Did,
but essentially, a lot of times you're playing something within a sax solely. You can't get loose. You got to hit the right
right.
notes to make the solely sound right. And so, I mean, it's a different kind of playing. Uh,
Did you ever
so, what
play
can I
dan-
say?
I'm curious. Did you ever play dances in New York? Dances with a big band or anything like that?
Uh, it's funny. I forgot to mention this one. When I first started my career, I toured with Stan Getz, and we used to play dances.
Right.
So I used to do that. Yeah, yeah. I mean, I was heavy in the Latin scene, and I did a lot of dances. But it was Latin stuff, Afro-Cuban salsa,
Right.
uh, more Puerto Rican and Dominican and Cuban. I did a lot of stuff for dance for on those situations.
That's very important stuff. I played with Paquito's band and Chico O'Farrill's band, and that's
Yeah, I played with
it's
both of those bands.
it, maybe I saw you. Maybe
Yeah,
it's I brought
you
up
may have.
I brought up the dance because I'm thinking of the young people. So that's where I was headed with this. I noticed with a lot of the young educational system we have with the music, some of us cats are thinking that we're losing some of the dance feel, the bounce, the pulse, if you will. How do you feel about that?
Well, yeah, I mean, if you're going to play jazz, it really is dance music. You got to make people feel. If you're playing swing jazz or stuff like that, that concept of making the music make you move. I mean, I really learned that in the Latin stuff because the people when they dance off of the bass.
Hmm.
The bass is really they're listening to everything, but the bass is how you get in the dance. That's hard to explain, especially because I'm a crappy dancer. But uh, essentially, but you have to make it so that you have things that people can dance to, in the bass, and the bass should be very danceable when you're playing Latin music. So, and in jazz too. Uh, if you're playing, I was listening to this stuff the other day. Forget the name of the bass player, but he's a guy who played with Les Brown
Hmm.
and his band of renown.
Right.
And and this guy, his stuff was so good when he was playing. Uh, I heard him in this guy Don Golden. It's kind of a rare record,
Right.
and it was like these studio guys who made like a jazz record, and this bass player who played with Les Brown was on it. And when I was listening to it, I felt like moving. He just made me want to move, and great playing. So yes, I think that's a good thing. It depends, if you're playing more modern and creative styles, it's not really you're not thinking like that.
So with your
But
with your students, with I checked. I know you teach. I think do you still teach in Manhattan School of Music? Or?
yeah, I'm still there. I don't teach that much there anymore. But yeah, I was there for a long time.
I'm curious with all of your experience. Sometimes it's easier to tell people who you've not played with, But with your experience, how do you approach your bass students to get them? Because the final goal is to play music that people enjoy and feel in their heart, like you were talking about the dancing, the feelings. How do you get them to get past the notes? Let's say.
Well, that's a good point. Well, I basically get them to understand the different styles and realize it's not just one way to play. When you pick up the bass and you join a band, you play with a band, you gotta know you gotta know styles. I mean, I do a lot of Afro-Cuban, I do a lot of Brazilian music, uh, and I do many different styles. So you have to listen to the players and look at the music that they're playing, and you should know the concept of how to play the bass with that style.
How
And
did
that
how did
and
how did you learn this? And how many hours a day would you practice when you were young?
oh, I used to practice 8 hours a day, but that's another story.
Hmm.
But it what you want to do is if I listen to a lot of music.
Hmm.
So if you listen to a lot of music, and not just put it on while you're washing the dishes or something, but I mean, put the music on and really get deep into it. Listen to what everybody's doing. Listen to what the drummer's doing. Listen to what the piano player's doing. Listen, what the bass player's doing. Listen to what the bass player's doing with the piano player. Listen to what the bass player's doing with the drummer. I listen to it like that. And then listen to what the horn players, how the horn players responding to the band, and listen to the whole thing, and then you start to understand what they do. And then like if I play with somebody and they're like kind of a straight ahead, I'm thinking this is kind of a Paul Chambers kind of vibe. So therefore I've studied Paul Chambers. I know a lot of his stuff. I'll go in that way, but still I'll play my own thing. uh I won't try to copy and be Paul Chambers, but but he's part of a style. He invented and he came up with a concept. If I'm playing in another thing, I try to think about bass players that played in that style, and then how I can go in that direction, but still maybe do it my own way. Because some bass players, especially some younger players, they sound good in a band, but then you put them in another band and they play the same way. And you have to change the way you play with whomever you're playing with.
That's an excellent point. We've had some, as you know, I spent a long time in the bassy band, and I noticed some of the younger players came in drums and bass. Didn't seem that concept that you just talked about, that listening to everyone, that study of the history, and the big pulse. We call it the big beat, the big beat.
Nothing like the big beat.
You know.
You have to understand is that you, when I say you, I mean me, everybody.
Uh-huh.
You are not the most important thing. The music is.
Right.
I say that to myself. Actually, I have a bass mantra that I teach my students. I say the mantra. This is what you should say every time you play. A bass line is only as good as how it makes the other members of the band sound. That's a bass line, not a solo, a bass line. It doesn't matter what you play. In other words, you can say, "Oh, I'm playing the hippest stuff, and I'm doing this permutation, and I'm playing this superimposed rhythm, and I'm doing this." Meaningless. What you want is your lines to make everybody sound better.
Wow.
And it's one of these things, easier said than done.
That was quite profound what you said, and the first person that came to my brain was Ron Carter.